Good afternoon and welcome to our celebration of service. I'm Ron Barnes. It's an honor to be your president. We have an exciting meeting today and I welcome you. The thought for the day: attitude is a choice. Happiness is a choice. Optimism is a choice. Kindness is a choice. Giving is a choice. And respect is a choice. Whichever choice you makes you. Choose wisely. This is from Roy T. Bennett. The reflection is Dave Meyer. Dave?
Hello, everybody. Thanks, Ron. I'd like to reflect today on a time in our history with lessons for today. It was a time when neighbors fought against neighbors. Their conflict was driven by ethno-nationalism and bigotry, with claims of having the right heritage and of being on the right side of history. I expect that you probably didn't know that before the Civil War, that in high school, Jefferson Davis was voted the most likely to secede. But I'm not describing our Civil War, but instead the troubles of Northern Ireland, another ethno-nationalist conflict. It pitted Protestants against Catholics over civil rights and governance of a sliver of British-controlled land on the island of Ireland. This conflict started in the late 1960s and ended 25 years ago with the signing of the Good Friday Accords. My wife Cindy and I visited Northern Ireland earlier this year. While there, I tried to learn everything that I could about this turbulent period. You see, as a teen, my family hosted Northern Irish young people in a student exchange. That long ago experience left me with many unanswered questions. How did the troubles start? How did they end? Are there lessons that can be applied to our current global troubles? While in Northern Ireland, we visited Derry, Londonderry, the starting place of the conflict. It's a city of two names. It was first named Derry by the Irish and then later renamed Londonderry by the British. Even today, referring to it by one name or the other can elicit a negative response depending upon which Northern Irelander you're talking to. In the 1960s, if you were a renter in Derry, you could not vote in local elections. The Catholic residents of the city were mostly renters, and the Protestant residents mostly owned their homes. The police and city government were dominated by Protestants at that time. Demonstrations began in support of suffrage for renters that were inspired by the American Civil Rights Movement. These demonstrations were sometimes violently opposed by authorities, and sometimes the protesters themselves became violent. Sadly, even after suffrage was granted to renters, peace was not fully restored. Local authorities eventually asked that the British Army be deployed to help keep the peace. Initially, a majority welcomed the troops as peacemakers. This changed on January 30th, 1972, at an event that later became known as Bloody Sunday, when soldiers shot and killed 14 unarmed protesters. The event was organized to protest imprisonment without trial by authorities. 26 unarmed Catholics were shot. including many that were running away or trying to help the wounded. It is generally believed that this is when the sectarian violence spiraled out of control in Northern Ireland. What followed was 26 years of bloody conflict in which thousands died. Both sides committed horrible acts of terrorism. Next. Ultimately, through the vision of the leaders of the opposing political parties in Northern Ireland, a basis for restoration of peace was established in the early 1990s. Many people, however, believe that it was the women of Northern Ireland that initially drove the peace initiative. The two political leaders were Gerry Adams of Sinn Féin and John Hume of the Social Democratic and Labour Party. They both used a simple slogan to drive home the need for peace. An eye for an eye leaves everyone blind. President Bill Clinton, Irish leader Bernie Adwern, and Prime Minister John Major also played active roles in the successful negotiations. The Good Friday Accords were implemented in 1998 through successful referenda held both in Northern Ireland and in the Republic of Ireland. Today, the peace still holds, but divisions remain. What can we learn from this? Well, first, tribalism is a core human trait. Humans have a strong innate desire to separate people into them and us. Second, once violence becomes an accepted method of promoting change, it's difficult to stop. We must never cease to demand that redress of societal grievances be conducted peacefully. Lastly, the second question from Rotary's four-way test is essential. Is it fair to all concerned? Without fairness, it's impossible for people to maintain goodwill. Sadly, today we see history repeating itself in Israel and Gaza. But as with Northern Ireland, peacemakers can emerge there too.
Thanks, Dave. Michelle Cohen will introduce our guests today. Michelle?
Thank you. We've got one guest. I'd ask you to stand so you can be properly welcomed. Whitney Cordova is the guest of Jim Bright. I'm going to tack on one more thing. Strangely, I too was involved in a Northern Ireland exchange program as a youth. So there you go.
Kyla, do we have any guests online?
We do. Hello, Rotarians. Cadet Noah Jager is with us from the U.S. Military Academy at West Point.
Thank you. We do have some birthdays to talk about. Natalie had a birthday yesterday, so happy birthday, Natalie. Greer Carson has one, I believe, today. Greer, happy birthday. Dan Matthews tomorrow. And also Jim Sims today. Jim is not with us because he's had some major surgery. And there's a card back that Natalie has that if you haven't had a chance to sign it yet, please give your signature to and your best wishes to Jim. We have some Rotary anniversaries also. Trent Decker, 7 years total, 5 in our club. Trent, congratulations. And Peg Frisbee, 26 years. Peg, thank you for your service. I did receive a notice that the district is matching any gift to the Rotary Foundation. If you want to be a quick Paul Harris Fellow, you can write a check for $500. They will match that $500 and you'll be the Paul Harris Fellow immediately. Again, Mike Baker's here. If you want to know where you are in the status of building up your points, Mike would be glad to share that with you. But I'd like to also ask that Tyler put up his picture of his recital. Many of you were able to attend this event. He says it was very successful. I'd also like to send a shout out to both Natalie and Ashley Wesley for the outstanding job they did preparing for our holiday party. I think we all enjoyed the party, so thank you, ladies. We haven't had happy dollars for a while, so I'd like to do that at this point. Who's happy out there today?
I'm so happy because after years of playing and teaching, I found these perfect shoes. Oh, they're a help and anything but help.
I will put an intent on this. If I can find it. Because today, about an hour ago, I finished my music entrepreneurship class in basic students. I'm so pleased that that's over.
I got $1 because I gave my big dollars to the Rotary Foundation. And I'm happy to say that we are at this point, pretty much, and look at the, Natalie, like, we are at $7,900 for scholarships into our endowment for our scholarships. So if you got a letter and you haven't done anything yet, not too late. Thanks.
This year, Sarah and I went over yesterday. We liked some hundreds and we had this time. Decorating their first Christmas tree. We had this all up. We were very excited.
That was a great picture, by the way, you sent around. Thanks for sharing.
I have a $35 in honor of Dr. Joseph Manlin and Sarah Ellen Manlin, who've been with the AMPAT program since 1990. And they've done a great job. They were recognized at a ceremony at the computer room this last week, and a number of Rotary people showed up to celebrate the AMPAT program. That's Indiana University Medical School Kenya program. Just a quick footnote, it's now expanding to Mexico, Ghana, and Nepal. So that's off of the Manlins and the AMPAT program.
I have finished my Christmas shopping. Packages are in the mail. If they're completed, done.
I'm happy because got all my Christmas decorations and shopping done, and I'm leaving Thursday to go see my kids and grandkids in Texas.
Anybody on the line?
Any happy dollars on Zoom? All right, thank you very much. We have a special program today. You will find out rather quickly as I introduce Michael Shermis, our program co-chair, that he had to call an audible at the line. And our speaker, who was supposed to be here today, called him this morning and said that he was ill, didn't want to share his illness with the club. So we will get him rescheduled at another time. But at this point, our program chair, Michael Shermis. Oh, he deserves the.
Well, it was a bit disappointing to get the call that our speaker, Bruce Mill, was sick last night, and he had really hoped that he'd be able to do it. But yeah, he said, I'm just too sick to be able to present, and hopefully we'll be able to reschedule him sometime in the spring. So I thought, wow, not a lot of time to line up a program today. And so I thought, I think we should the 5th. Let's have some fun. So here's what we're going to do. All right. So at your table, we're going to spend about 15 minutes and we're going to go around the table and you are going to tell a story. Try to keep it to a minute or two so that everybody for sure gets the story in. The story can be about holiday memories or fun travel or just something that's funny that you'd love to tell and just make people happy and smile. And then you're going to have somebody there at the table who can kind of keep track, make sure that everybody gets a chance to share their story. And that person is going to run the little group and make sure that somebody gets nominated to tell the story to the whole group. And we'll come around with the mic and the camera, and each table is going to have one person tell the story to the whole group. And they're going to say, that's the great one. You got to tell that to everybody. One of those kind of things. So that's what we're going to do today. All right. Okay. Last minute. I'm going to start the clock now. 15 minutes from now, I'll pull back everybody and then we will do it. Question, Tracy? Yeah, and online, go ahead and break into a breakout room, and you guys are going to have the conversation and come back in about 15 minutes. You can check in with Tyler over chat to make sure that he knows that bring you back in. So, all right, tell stories. And Vivian and Trent, you might want to get to another table. There's a table with only 4 people if you want to come up to this one. So it's up to you. give you another. So we'll give you another minute to wrap up. So wrap up here at your table and make sure you got somebody to tell it in just another minute or so. We're going to go around and start telling stories. Okay, I'm going to pull us back together. One minute. 1 minute. Okay, I'm going to pull us back together because we want to make sure everybody has enough time to tell their stories per table. How about this table right here?
They appointed me because I'm a preacher. I'm supposed to be able to preach or pray or die at a moment's notice. Our sharing included Indian background and Native American background and Appalachian Mountain Service and military service. And even Wendell said nothing about his background in Kankakee, Illinois, where he really had wonderful Christmases. Did I forget anybody? I think we got them all. It was a wonderful time of sharing. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, we all talked about Christmas memories for the most part, and then also sharing of recipes. And I shared a situation of how our family used to do Christmas. And we always went to my grandmother's in Pawhuska, Oklahoma. You may be familiar with that from Flower Moon movie that's out. And it was a 2-story building. And Grandpa, this was the one time he actually lit up for Christmas because he was a bit of a curmudgeon. And he put up a Christmas tree. He had the Lionel train going underneath it. We had the icicles that are biohazards you don't see anymore. And the fabulous old ornaments that were fantastic. And so my 2 cousins, my brother and I, every night on Christmas Eve would go up to the upstairs, which was kind of banned. But that's where we would sleep. And we would get so excited and wait. And Dad and Mom, and you're laughing, Dad and Mom and my Aunt Darlene and Uncle Charlie might have sat at the table downstairs having a little bit of wine or whatever, bourbon probably, and putting together what Santa was bringing, because the gift from Santa was the big deal. So one year, I think I was probably 8 and my cousin Chuck was 8, and we got bean bags, the big bean bags with the like styrofoam beads in them. And I had a green one. My cousin Chuck, actually his was red, white, and blue. It was the coolest. And so we come running in, and my dad, being the coolest, he comes. And by the way, he was kind of thin and lanky at the time, I'll just say. He comes running in his jammies and just jumps on Chuck's beanbag, and boom, it exploded everywhere. So way to ruin Chuck's Christmas, Dad.
Hi, we talked mostly about the various Christmas experiences, so I was just gonna tell, this is kind of a Christmas story. Over COVID, I became sort of enthralled by online auctions, and my husband had mentioned we needed new Christmas trees because we had the old-fashioned lights, and we wanted more energy efficient LED lights. So in June or July, there was an auction of Christmas trees. I thought, this is great. So I bid and won a 7.5-foot tree and a 9.5-foot tree, because we used 2 trees. And then there was a 12-foot tree. And I thought, perfect, because we have a cathedral ceiling. When you walk in the house, I thought this will be gorgeous. So I won this 12-foot Christmas tree. So I go to pick it up. Well, it now needs a van because these boxes are huge. The 12-foot tree is 2 of these huge boxes. So we get it back to the house, get it in the garage. Now we can barely get our cars in. So for the next 6 months, we can hardly get our cars in the garage. So I go to put the trees up last month. So the 7.5-foot tree, perfect in the living room. The 9.5-foot tree, perfect in the TV room. And then I look at this 12-foot tree and it's like, there is no way this will fit in our house. The base was like this table. It was huge. So I'm thinking, how am I going to tell Dave we are stuck with these 2 big boxes in our garage for the rest of our lives? And we ran into the pastor at Dave's church and I said, would you by any chance need a 12-foot Christmas tree? And within a day, they had brought someone over with a truck. They had hauled it out of our garage. This Sunday, they put it up. It hit the ceiling of Fellowship Hall. It was huge and beautiful. And I have to say, a little joy in my heart to see this tree actually in space. So now it's like I'm not really a hoarder. I am a visionary of what can happen when you think big, like a 12-foot tree.
Well, we shared lots of memories of our Christmases. One of us had the mumps on Christmas in Austria and Salzburg. One of us tried to buy a pig in Budapest. One of us loved looking at Christmas lights through their window because they had chapped lips and the window was cold and it felt so good. And one of us went caroling and raised some money that wasn't supposed to happen. And one of them carried on a tradition that they had learned years ago overseas and has a Yule log in their neighborhood still, so that we can throw away the bad and wish for the good. And my story was about Christmas Eve. My mother, who loved Christmas, cannot explain that, would don her cap and her nightshirt and do the most hysterical, dramatic reading of A Visit from St. Nicholas every Christmas Eve, much to the delight of her kids, who were typically on the floor, convulsed in laughter.
We had a wide variety of things. It two people talked about a lot about this living and growing up in small towns, hitchhiking in small towns, getting stuck at Christmas with tons of snow. And then we had someone else talk about getting stuck underneath a lift, a car lift, and having to call for help. The person that came to help him had a pegged leg and started to lower the jack even more. But he did get out okay. That was a pretty good story. And then we actually had 2 stories that I think related more to the holiday spirit. One, if I can sort of paraphrase it, with the reflection we had today about how we can control a lot of things, how we feel. But a lot of times in our lives, in the lives of others, it's up to somebody else. Accidents happen. Somebody else could be in the wrong place at the right time. So it helps you appreciate, I think, Byron, if I get this right, I'll just sort of sum it up. Sort of you have to be appreciative of things and people around your lives, because you never really know. Things can change a split second in our lives, so you have to think of that. And then had another story that definitely related to this time of year, the Christmas season, and dealing with people that are homeless, and being able to relate to those people in the way that the Bible and Jesus spoke of. And I think the message there is being able to look at people. And Phil Emerson, I remember one time mentioned about how when you see people and you don't really understand them, maybe you should go sit down and just talk to them. So that was another message. And I just had a short story of actually being contacted by people from the Animal Planet who wanted to come to my farm because they were doing a series on finding Bigfoot. And, you know, all I can say is they actually showed up, 8 people the first day, 12 people's producers, cameras, microphones on a tractor. And they kept trying to talk me into agreeing that it was probably that Bigfoot lived in our woods, which I said, I don't really think so. But they said, yeah, you never know. Anyhow, they were so serious, they landed a helicopter in our back field. It was so windy, the cameraman, he got out and said he wasn't going back up anymore. And they never aired the show. After being there for 2 days and filming it, that's probably because I didn't go along.
So we had a great conversation, and I'll just quickly say that it was, some of it was about the season, and some of it was actually related to conflict in Northern Ireland, and so it was just fabulous stories from each one of us. And I spoke about a story of my own, which I'll quickly mention because I know that we're running out of time. But my Twitter X, formerly known as Twitter handle, is Alien Baker. Okay. And I'm going to tell this story on the condition that none of you take this on as is my name. Anyway, it's fine. So what happened was that I was all of 21 in South Africa in the midst of this apartheid conflict. I was a young student at the University of Cape Town living this sort of schizophrenic life. I was on the one hand a musician, deeply devoted to, you know, culture and my own, you know, storytelling through music. But then on the other hand, very, very involved in anti-apartheid activity on the campus. Lots of demonstrating, lots of activity among student organizations and what have you. The Saturday night before this incident, international delegates to a conference had come to the city of Cape Town, very much against our wishes because they were breaking the general feeling about South Africa. And but it turns out that as a flute player, I was invited to provide music for this very fancy event. So I went to this event in my tuxedo and a guitarist as well accompanying me. And I played my first half. And the delegates were there, and some of the government representatives were there. And then I went into the elevator, 14 floors, and I posted anti-apartheid stickers all over the elevator. And then I went back and I straightened my tie and I continued to play through the evening. Which created great consternation amongst everybody because nobody knew what the hell was going on. So following Monday morning, 6 a.m., I get a call from this committee that I was part of, and they were going to demonstrate against the opening of this conference. And I said, well, I've got a flute lesson at 10 o'clock. They said, no problem, we'll be done by then. So I said, okay, fine. So I jumped on my bicycle and I went to demonstrate, and we were demonstrating, and we were attacked by a bunch of policemen with tear gas and the whole thing. It went, well, one of these completely insane, crazy moments where it just became violent very quickly. And so we dropped everything that we had and we started running. And as I was running past this bus, there were these people on the bus saying, there's the flute player, it's running away. So I ran away. We were finally all caught, and we were put we were taken to the central jail of Cape Town. And it was pretty scary going through the night. And then the following morning, finally, our lawyers were able to work out a way for us to be released. And there's this burly South African Afrikaans. And in those days, Afrikaners didn't speak very much English and vice versa. You know, And he looks at these names, 42 names of students, and at the very top is my name. And he looks at it and he says, Elian Baker. And from there, that caused a huge laugh amongst all the students. And from there on, my name forever became known as Elian Baker.
This is a post-Christmas story, but some of you will probably think that I'm making this up. But Indiana University won the Big Ten in football, and they got to play in the Rose Bowl on January the 1st, 1967. And I'd been out of law school a year, but I was determined to go, and I did. And when I think it was one of the largest air traveling of taking people to another state to fly from Indiana to California to Los Angeles. There were literally hundreds, probably thousands of Hoosiers that went to that event. The planes all left Indianapolis late in the evening. So when I got to the airport and got processed to get on the plane, the stewardess said, "You're going to be sitting next to someone very special." And it turned out to be the immediate past president of Indiana University, Herman B. Wells. And I don't know which was more exciting for me, going to the football game or having the opportunity to visit with Herman B. Wells for over an hour before he dozed off and went to sleep. That's my story.
Carla, do we have anybody online to tell a story?
Yeah, I'm sure we do. Does room number 1, does anyone want to talk a little bit about what you all spoke about? Have silence from room 1. Well, Dr. Hadawi and I had a great conversation about Thanksgiving. Dr. Hadawi, do you want to talk a little bit about your Thanksgiving experiences?
Well, my goodness, 2 weeks in a row I speak to the meeting. Thank you, Kyla. Kyla and I shared the story of Thanksgiving. How did I get Thanksgiving for the very first time? Was the year I came here to the United States, 1965. And I never experienced that from back home. We know about Christmas, but Thanksgiving was unknown. I was so impressed that a human being pause for a day and celebrate the year, how it passed. Despite the up and down of the 60s, I felt that day is a special day, a unique day, reflect who we are and how thankful we are to what we were giving from health, wealth, safety, etc. So I took it on me, and during the years, which goes to about 35 years I'm in practice, every time I am on call to the emergency room, fall and Thanksgiving, I switch it with somebody who worked Thanksgiving, but I'll give them Christmas off. And I never run short of the people who want to have their Christmas off. And I was celebrating, I could commit myself to my family. And during the years when I was in Bloomington, without a fail, we always hosted international students who stay in Bloomington and come and recognize how a man like me, who never had one until he came at the age of 22 to this country. I share with Kyla what I know about Thanksgiving. It started in New England in the 1620, where the early settlers were able to live in peace and harmony with the local Indian tribe. And that is where the turkey served. Before all things fell apart at the end, as usual, we're human destructive, a lot more than constructive. In any case, she mentioned to me that FDR is the man who recognized this as a national holiday and established from that era to this day. I hope I'm not taking too much time. There are some people might be speaking because I have one little story to tell you about, which will create another Thanksgiving Day for me from my history. Is it okay to proceed or I stop?
You may have to save it, Raj, because we're running out of time real fast. So
Of course, of course. Thank you and have a wonderful holiday to anybody who is sitting with us.
So our table talked mostly about travel. And I had a unique travel story that they thought I should go ahead and tell. So this is about 30 years ago, and I was exhibiting. I was not that savvy of a traveler then, and I went to Detroit to do a 3-day conference. Went to the airport, got my stuff, picked up my bag and went in and exhibited for 3 days. And I got one of those transfer tickets that you take to get the ride from the airport and back to the airport, some company. And when I finished, I went out after that 3 days and said, I need to go back to the airport, and gave my ticket to them, and they took me to the airport. But when I got out, I went, wait a minute. So who knew there were 2 airports in Detroit? And they're at the opposite ends of the city. I was in a total panic, jumped out, freaked out, rushed out, and went to this company who did it and said, oh my God, I can't believe you took me to the wrong airport. This is terrible. What am I gonna do? What am I gonna do? And the guy said, sir, calm down. You are what we call a distressed passenger. Thanks. I really appreciate that. We will take care of you, sir. We have a limo and we're going to take you there. Never driven in a limo in my life. Jumped in this limo. The guy drove somewhere between 85, 95. I didn't want to look to see if he actually broke 100, but I've never driven that fast, and it was an amazing experience. I rushed out when I got to the airport with just minutes to spare, obviously back in the days when they don't do any of those check-in things, and rushed out of there, just running as fast as I could. And as I approached the gate, just running away, you could hear somebody pick up their little thing and go, we got a runner. I made it into the plane. They shut the door, and the entire plane broke out in applause for me.
Was this fun? I do want to thank folks that really helped us today for the meeting. Marilyn Wood as the greeter, Michelle Cohen introducing our guest, Kyla for your work on Zoom, David Meyer for your reflection, Greer Carson again doing a great job as reporter for today, and we didn't have, other than Happy Dollars, Tracy helped us with the Happy Dollars, so thank you. And then Michael, thank you for your audible at the line. It worked out exceptionally well. Next week, we'll be back here in the Frangipani room, and we will hear about artificial intelligence. Josh Perry will be speaking, and that'll be interesting. Some people call military intelligence oxymoron. We'll see about artificial intelligence. Tyler, would you please share the 4-way test? The 4-way test of the, if you'll stand and join with me, the 4-way test of the think, say, and do. First, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, is it beneficial? No benefit. Fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? Fifth, is it fun?